The massive council chamber stretched across 3 miles of polished crystal floor. Representatives from 847 different species sat in their designated areas. Some floated in energy fields. Others needed special breathing apparatus. A few existed as pure thought patterns displayed on glowing screens. Ambassador Krex of the Therian Empire checked his datapad for the 3rd time. Something felt wrong. In 300 years of Galactic Council meetings, the humans had never missed a session. They might arrive late, covered in dirt from some archaeological dig. They might bring strange food that smelled terrible to most species. But they always came. Today, their seats sat empty. "Where are the humans?" asked Ambassador Vex, her crystalline body chiming softly as she moved. "They should have been here 2 hours ago." Krex tapped his communication device. "Council Control, please contact the human delegation." Then, the voice of the Zenthari operator came through the speakers. "Sir, we have been trying to reach them since yesterday. All communication channels to human space are silent." The word hung in the air like a bad smell. Other ambassadors began to notice the empty human section. Whispers started in dozens of languages. Council Speaker Morak, an ancient being whose species had founded the council, raised his hand for silence. His voice boomed through the chamber. "We will proceed without the human delegation. Perhaps they are dealing with some internal matter." But as the day went on, more reports came in. Trade ships heading to human colonies had found empty docking stations. Scientific expeditions to human research outposts discovered abandoned facilities. The humans, all of them, had simply vanished. Ambassador Krex left the council chamber early. He went straight to his ship and set course for the nearest human world. Earth's solar system was only a few jumps away. If anyone had answers, it would be there. The journey took 18 hours. When Krex's ship dropped out of hyperspace near Earth, he expected to see the usual traffic. Human ships coming and going, space stations buzzing with activity. Instead, he found nothing. Earth hung in space like a blue marble, beautiful and quiet. Too quiet. "Scan the planet," Krex ordered his ship's computer. "Scanning complete," the computer replied. "I detect no life signs." "That's impossible. Earth has over 8 billion humans." "I detect cities. I detect power sources. I detect vehicles, but no biological signatures matching human life." Krex guided his ship into Earth's atmosphere. He flew over New York, London, Tokyo. The cities looked normal. Lights were on, cars sat parked in streets, but no people walked the sidewalks. No ships flew through the sky. He landed in what humans called Central Park. The grass was green and well-maintained. Flowers bloomed in careful patterns, but the park was empty. Krex walked to the nearest building. The doors opened automatically. Inside he found coffee shops with fresh food still warm. Office buildings with computers still running. Everything looked like the humans had just stepped away for a moment. But they had not stepped away. They were gone. Over the next few days, reports flooded in from across human space. Every human colony, every research station, every mining operation, all empty. Ships found floating in space with no crew. Artificial intelligence systems still running, but no humans to give them orders. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. Ambassador Vex spoke first. Perhaps they evacuated. Some great danger forced them to leave. "Where would 8 billion beings go?" asked Ambassador Krex. "Their ships are still here. Their colonies show no signs of battle or disaster." Speaker Morak leaned forward in his chair. "In my 4,000 years of life, I have seen species disappear. War takes some, disease takes others. Natural disasters claim their share. But never like this. Never all at once. Never so clean." Ambassador Yorth of the Silicon Confederacy uploaded his thoughts directly to the chamber's displays. "We should investigate their technology. Perhaps they discovered something. Perhaps they evolved beyond physical form." Many species could do that. The Etherians had given up solid bodies centuries ago. The photon dancers existed as pure energy. But humans had shown no signs of being ready for such a change. They still loved their physical pleasures. Food, music, sports, art you could touch. Send exploration teams to every human world, Speaker Morak decided. Find answers. The sudden disappearance of an entire spacefaring species concerns us all. But the exploration teams found nothing useful. Human cities remained perfect and empty. Their technology still worked. Their artificial gardens still grew. Even their pets were gone. Dogs, cats, birds, every living thing that had shared space with humans. Krex stood in the Human Council offices 3 days later. The humans had always decorated their space with images of their homeworld, pictures of forests and oceans, mountains and deserts. Now these images seemed like memories of something lost forever. "Computer," he said to the room's AI system, "where did the humans go?" "I am sorry, Ambassador Krex," the computer replied in its pleasant voice. "I do not have that information." "When did they leave?" "I have no record of departure." "Are they planning to return?" "I have no data on human intentions or whereabouts." The AI knew everything about running human society. It could control their shits, manage their cities, tend their farms, but it knew nothing about where its creators had gone. That night, Krex filed his report with the Council. 8 billion humans had vanished without a trace. No signs of struggle. No farewell messages. No explanation. They had simply ceased to exist in normal space. Other ambassadors suggested theories: time travel, dimensional shift, mass kidnapping by unknown forces. But none of the theories felt right. None explained the perfect preservation of human civilization. As Krex prepared to leave human space, he looked back at Earth one more time. The planet continued its slow rotation around its star. Weather patterns still moved across its surface. But the world felt hollow, empty, like a stage after the actors had gone home. He did not know that other eyes were watching human space. Ancient enemies that had waited in the dark between galaxies. They had tried to enter Council space many times over the centuries. Each time, something had stopped them. Now, for the first time in 300 years, they sensed no resistance. The hunt could begin again. 3 weeks after the humans vanished, the first attack came from the edge of known space. The mining colony of Kepler 442b sent out a distress signal at 0347 hours Galactic Standard Time. Then the signal cut to static. Council ships rushed to investigate, but found only empty space where a thriving mining operation had existed for 200 years. Not destroyed, not damaged, gone, as if someone had erased it from reality. Admiral Torvin of the Altarian Defense Fleet studied the sensor readings with growing concern. "There should be debris," he told his science officer. "Energy signatures, something. You cannot make a space station and 3,000 beings simply disappear." "Sir," the science officer replied, "according to our instruments, there was never anything here." But Admiral Torvin had been to this colony many times. He had friends there. The Kepler mining facility had extracted rare crystals used in faster-than-light engines. Half the galaxy's ships depended on those crystals. The facility had been there. Now it was not. Reports came in from other rim territories. The agricultural world of New Ceres had gone silent. A research station studying black holes had stopped transmitting. Trading posts along the frontier routes reported strange shadows moving between the stars. In the council chamber, Speaker Morak called for emergency session. Representatives arrived in a panic. Some species had already begun evacuating their outer colonies. "Show us what our scouts have found," Morak commanded. The chamber's main display lit up with images that made several delegates gasp. Space itself seemed to be moving. dark patches flowed between star systems like living oil. Where these patches passed, matter simply stopped existing. Ambassador Vex's crystalline form rang with fear harmonics. "What are those things?" "We call them devourers," said Admiral Torvin. "Our oldest records mention them. They consumed the precursor civilization 12 million years ago. We thought they had moved beyond our galaxy." More images appeared, ships that looked like they were made of bone and shadow. They moved in ways that hurt to watch, folding space around themselves. Everything they touched became part of them. "There are more threats," Admiral Torvin continued. "Hive minds are attacking the spiral arm colonies. They turn entire populations into extensions of a single consciousness. The Silicon Confederacy has lost contact with 6 worlds in 2 days. Ambassador Yorth projected his distress in flashing colors. Mall people are uploading themselves into emergency servers, but the hive minds can corrupt digital consciousness. We cannot hide from them." The worst news came from the exploration ship Wanderer. Captain Zex, a veteran of many deep space missions, appeared on the communication screen. His fur was white with stress. "Council, we have encountered something at the edge of the Great Void. They call themselves the Void-Touched. They exist between dimensions. They can change the laws of physics in local space. My crew watched them turn a star inside out. Gravity flowed upward. Time moved backward. 3 of my officers no longer exist in any timeline." The chamber fell silent. These were threats from the galaxy's darkest myths. Enemies that had destroyed civilizations when the universe was young. "How many are coming?" Speaker Morak asked. "All of them," Captain Zex replied. "Every nightmare our ancestors faced. They are converging on Council space from every direction. It is as if something that kept them away has been removed." Ambassador Krex felt ice in his blood. "When did these attacks begin?" 3 weeks ago, sir. The same day the human delegation failed to appear for the Council session. The timing could not be chance. But what did it mean? Over the following days, the attacks intensified. The Devourers consumed 7 more star systems. The hive minds converted the entire Arcturus sector. The Void-Touched turned a nebula into a portal to somewhere that existed in negative space. Council defense fleets moved to intercept the threats. The results were disasters. The mighty Centaurian battleships fired their planet-killing weapons at the Devourers. The energy beams simply vanished into the dark patches. Then the Devourers flowed over the ships, and they ceased to exist. The Therian Empire's robot fleet attacked the hive minds. Within hours, every artificial intelligence had been converted. The robots turned on their creators with perfect coordination and ruthless efficiency. The Photon Dancers tried to fight the Void-Touched in energy form. They emerged from the battle as geometric shapes that screamed in colors that had no names. Advanced civilizations that had kept peace for millennia found their weapons useless against enemies that operated by different rules. Ambassador Krex worked through the night in his private quarters, studying ancient databases. The oldest records in Council archives mentioned these threats. But the records also mentioned something else. Guardians, Watchers, species that fought the darkness so others could live in the light. He found references to the Iron Warriors, who had held the line against the Devourers 2 million years ago. They had died to the last soldier, but bought time for younger species to evolve and grow strong. The Songweavers had fought the hive minds in battles across the galactic core. Their music had kept individual consciousness alive, even as the hive consumed worlds. They sang until their voices failed and their spirits broke. The reality anchors had opposed the Void-Touched by their very existence. They stabilized space-time by believing in consistent physical laws. When they finally despaired, the Void-Touched had poured through the cracks they left behind. Every guardian species had fallen eventually, but each had bought time. Each had pushed back the darkness long enough for new civilizations to arise and take up the watch. Krex realized with growing horror that the pattern had continued into the present. Someone had been holding the line against these ancient threats. Someone the Council had never recognized or thanked. He thought about the humans, their strange fascination with warrior stories, their tendency to volunteer for the most dangerous assignments, their colonies always placed in the most remote and risky locations. The humans had claimed they enjoyed exploring. They said they liked frontier life. They built their settlements on worlds others considered too dangerous or too far from civilization. But what if that was not the real reason? What if the humans had been doing what the guardian species had always done? Fighting monsters, so others did not have to know monsters existed. Krex's hands shook as he accessed the Council's strategic database. He looked at human colony locations over the past 300 years. Every single settlement was positioned at what military analysts would call a defensive point. Mountain passes in space, choke points between sectors, early warning positions along invasion routes. The humans had not been exploring. They had been standing guard. And now they were gone. As Krex completed his research, another alert flashed on his screen. The void touched had just erased the Andromeda Deep Space Observatory. The ancient enemies were only 12 days from the Council core worlds. Time was running out. Ambassador Krex landed his ship on the human colony world of Haven's Rest. He had come here many times for trade negotiations. The humans grew excellent coffee and made art that somehow touched the soul. Now the coffee shops stood empty, and the art galleries displayed masterpieces no one would ever see again. But Krex was not here for coffee or art. His research had shown him something disturbing. According to orbital scans, Haven's Rest drew 17 times more power than a normal agricultural colony needed. The extra energy had to go somewhere. He walked through the empty streets, carrying a deep-range sensor. The device could detect energy signatures through solid matter. As he moved toward the colony's center, the readings grew stronger. The strongest signal came from beneath the town hall. Krex found the entrance hidden behind a false wall in the basement. His sensor codes, granted by the Council for the investigation, opened the lock. Beyond the door, stairs led down into darkness. The stairs went much deeper than seemed possible. Krex descended for 20 minutes before reaching the bottom. Motion sensors activated lights as he walked forward. What he found made him gasp. A command center stretched before him, larger than most starship bridges. Screens covered every wall. Control stations sat ready for dozens of operators. At the room's center, a holographic display showed the local sector of space in perfect detail. Every ship, every station, every energy signature for 50 light-years in all directions. But it was not just a monitoring station. Weapon control panels lined one wall. Krex approached them carefully. The text was in human languages, but the Council database had translation programs. Quantum Torpedo Launcher, Target Devourer Mass Aggregation, Dimensional Anchor Array, Status Active, Function, Reality Stabilization, Coverage, All Headed Systems. Krex felt cold spreading through his body. These were not normal weapons. They were designed to fight enemies that should not exist. He accessed the station's computers. The human systems required no password. They recognized his Council clearance and opened freely. What he found made his legs weak. Records of battles, thousands of them. Threats detected at the galaxy's edge. Response forces deployed. Contacts eliminated before they could reach inhabited space. The dates went back 300 years. Every human colony had been built around facilities like this one. Every human settlement was a fortress disguised as a farm or research station. Krex called up the most recent entries. 3 weeks ago, The sensors had detected massive movement from the dark space beyond the galaxy. Enemies not seen for eons were stirring. The automated systems had tried to alert the human operators, but the humans were already gone. Fascinating, is it not? Krex spun around. A human stood in the doorway, but something was wrong with her. She was too pale, too thin. Her eyes held depths that seemed to look into spaces beyond normal existence. "You are human," Krex said. "Where are the others? Where did they go?" The woman smiled sadly. "They went to war, Ambassador, as we always have. My name is Sarah Chen. I am what humans call a ghost in the machine. My consciousness was uploaded to maintain critical systems while the living fought our last campaign." "Last campaign?" Sarah gestured to the screens around them. "For 300 years, we have held the line against the old enemies. Every time they gathered strength, we struck first. We kept them scattered. We prevented them from coordinating their attacks. But we always knew this day would come." She touched a control panel. The holographic display changed, showing massive fleets moving between galaxies. Ships that looked like living nightmares. Entities that existed in more than 3 dimensions. The Devourers, the Hive Minds, the Void-Touched, all the ancient evils. They have finally learned to work together. The combined threat is too great for conventional defense. Krex stared at the display. There were so many enemies, enough to consume not just the galaxy, but all the galaxies in the local cluster. "Your people knew this was coming?" "We have been preparing for it since we first learned of the old enemies. Every human colony was a monitoring post. Every human ship carried weapons designed to hurt things that could not be hurt. Every human soldier trained to fight impossibilities." Sarah led him to another section of the command center. Here, the walls displayed something that made Krex's soul ache. Photographs of humans, millions of them. Each image showed a person who had died fighting monsters in the dark spaces between stars. "These are our honored dead," Sarah explained. "They fell protecting species who never knew they existed. Children who fought nightmare entities so alien children can sleep safely. Parents who died in dimensions where death is not the worst thing that can happen." The scale of sacrifice was overwhelming. For 3 centuries, humans had been dying in secret battles. They had paid a price in blood and sanity to keep the galaxy safe. "Why?" Krex whispered. "Why did you not tell us? We could have helped." Sarah's laugh held no humor. "Could you have helped, Ambassador? Your species builds beautiful art. You write poetry that moves the soul. You create music that brings joy across the galaxy. Could you teach a child to kill something that feeds on hope itself? Could you send soldiers to fight in places where mathematics stops working?" Krex had no answer. "We told you we were explorers because that was kinder than the truth. We let you think we were strange because it was better than you knowing how necessary we were. Every species should have the chance to grow without facing the darkness too soon." She showed him more records. Human children trained from birth to fight enemies their minds could barely comprehend. Scientists who went insane studying weapons that violated the laws of physics. Soldiers who returned from battles speaking of colors that did not exist, and sounds that unmade reality. "The cost was destroying us," Sarah continued. "Each generation became harder, more cold, more willing to do terrible things for the greater good. We were becoming monsters ourselves to fight monsters. So we chose a different path." The holographic display changed again. This time, it showed empty space, but Krex's instruments detected something massive moving through dimensions beyond normal perception. "The living humans did not disappear, Ambassador. They went hunting. They followed our enemies back to their source. They are fighting now in spaces where thought becomes reality, and reality becomes nightmare. They are trying to end this threat forever. Will they succeed?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I do not know. The battles are being fought in places where success and failure have no meaning, where victory might mean becoming something that is no longer human. Alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Sarah's form flickered like a bad transmission. They come, she said. The first wave of enemies has reached the outer colonies. My time is ending. The system will shut down soon to prevent capture by the hive minds. What should we tell the council? Tell them the truth. Tell them what we did and why we did it. Tell them that some prices must be paid so others can remain innocent. Sarah began to fade. And tell them that if the living humans fall in their last battle, the galaxy will need new guardians. Someone must stand watch. Someone must fight the darkness. Her voice became a whisper. Someone must pay the price. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, then failed. In the growing darkness, Krex heard the sounds of systems shutting down forever. He ran for the surface, carrying the weight of terrible knowledge. Behind him, the Guardian station fell silent. All across human space, similar facilities were going dark. The Watchers were gone. The Guardians had fallen. And the ancient enemies were coming home. The Council emergency session lasted 18 hours. Ambassador Krex's report had shaken every representative to their core. The humans had not been explorers or merchants. They had been guardian angels, fighting demons so others could sleep peacefully. Now the demons were coming, and the angels were gone. Speaker Morak stood before the assembled delegates. His ancient face showed strain that 4,000 years of life had not prepared him for. We must defend ourselves. Alert every military force in Council space. Prepare for total war. Admiral Torvin activated the strategic display. It showed a galaxy being consumed from the edges inward. The Devourers had taken 40 systems in 5 days. The hive minds controlled entire sectors, turning billions of beings into extensions of alien consciousness. The void touched left regions of space where physics no longer worked correctly. Our combined fleets are moving to intercept, Admiral Torvin reported. Every species has contributed their best ships and warriors. We have 7,000 vessels forming a defensive line at the Barrier Nebula. The Barrier Nebula had been the edge of truly safe space for millennia. Beyond it lay the frontier territories where only the humans had chosen to settle. Now it would be the last line of defense for galactic civilization. Ambassador Vex chimed with worry. What weapons should our forces use against these enemies? Our files from the human stations show that normal weapons are useless. Admiral Torvin looked uncomfortable. The human records describe weapons we do not understand. Quantum disruptors that unmake matter at the subatomic level. Psychic scramblers that confuse hive-mind connections. Reality anchors that force the laws of physics to work properly. Can we build these weapons? Our scientists are trying, but the human technology is based on principles we have never studied. They were fighting a war we did not know existed. It will take years to understand their methods, years they did not have. The ancient enemies would reach the Barrier Nebula in 4 days. The first battle reports came in 72 hours later. Admiral Torvin's face was gray with shock as he addressed the council. The Altarian Third Fleet engaged Devourer forces at coordinates 847.3. The enemy appeared as a cloud of living darkness, 3 light minutes across. Our ships fired everything: plasma cannons, antimatter torpedoes, gravity bombs. The weapons had no effect. He paused, gathering strength to continue. The darkness touched the flagship Eternal Glory. The ship did not explode or break apart. It simply stopped existing. Sensors cannot detect any trace that it was ever there. 8,000 crew members erased from reality. Similar reports flooded in from across the battle line. The Tharian Empire's robot fleets had encountered the hive minds. the enemy sent psychic transmissions that infected artificial intelligences instantly. Within minutes, every robot ship had turned against its own creators. The crystalline confederacy tried to fight the void touched with pure energy weapons. The reality-warping entities had responded by changing the nature of energy itself in local space. Light became solid. Heat flowed upward. Cause and effect reversed. The crystal ships found themselves exploding before they fired their weapons. "How many ships have we lost?" Speaker Morak asked. "All of them," Admiral Torvin replied quietly. 7,000 vessels, the most advanced fleet in galactic history, gone in 6 hours. The council chamber fell silent, except for the sounds of species processing grief in their own ways. Crystalline beings chimed funeral songs. Energy creatures dimmed their glow. The few remaining robot delegates projected probability calculations that all showed the same result: total extinction within weeks. Ambassador Yorf uploaded his analysis directly to the chamber displays. The human records show they fought these enemies for 3 centuries. How did they succeed where we failed in hours? Krex had spent the last 3 days studying human battle tactics. What he found was horrifying. They did not fight them with ships or conventional weapons. They fought them with themselves. He activated a display showing human combat records from the frontier stations. Humans call it asymmetric warfare. They did not try to match the enemy's strength. They targeted weaknesses. Devourers cannot consume certain types of quantum energy. Hive minds are vulnerable to individuals who can maintain mental independence under extreme pressure. Void touched struggle against beings who absolutely refuse to accept that reality can be changed. The records showed human soldiers doing impossible things, walking into devourer clouds wearing suits that should not have protected them, maintaining their individual consciousness while surrounded by hive mind influence, standing in regions where the laws of physics had been rewritten, and insisting that gravity still pulled downward. They fought with will as much as weapons. Krex continued. Human psychology is uniquely suited to denying impossible things. They can believe in absolute truths even when reality itself argues against them. Speaker Morak leaned forward. Can other species learn these methods? The human records include training protocols, but the psychological requirements are extreme. Trainees must learn to function while being shown things that cannot exist. They must maintain logical thought while fighting enemies that violate logic. The human reports show that 60% of trainees suffered permanent mental damage, and humans were apparently built for this kind of warfare. Their minds could hold contradictory ideas without breaking. They could function in situations that would drive most species insane. More reports came in as the council debated. The ancient enemies had broken through the defensive line completely. They were advancing on 3 fronts toward the core systems where billions of beings lived in cities that had never known war. The Devourers consumed the Kepler Mining Consortium's main facilities. 12 billion beings simply ceased to exist. The hive minds converted the entire Vega Colony Federation. 27 species became extensions of a single alien consciousness. The void touched, reached the Centauri Research Complex, and turned it into a gateway to dimensions where mathematics screamed. How long until they reach the Council Worlds? Ambassador Vex asked. Admiral Torvin consulted his tactical displays. At current speed, 6 days, but they are accelerating. The more they consume, the stronger they become. 6 days to evacuate 30 trillion beings from the core worlds. But evacuate to where? The enemies came from every direction. There was nowhere to run that they would not follow. In the depths of space, ancient evils that had slept for eons awakened fully. They remembered the taste of civilized worlds. They hungered for the energy of advanced cultures. And now, for the first time in 300 years, no one stood in their way. The guardian angels had fought their last battle in dimensions beyond mortal understanding. The shield that had protected galactic civilization was gone. As the reports grew worse, Krex found himself thinking about the human he had spoken to. Sarah Chen, the ghost in the machine. Her last words echoed in his mind. Someone must stand watch. Someone must fight the darkness. Someone must pay the price. But who could pay such a price? Who could become what the humans had been? Who could sacrifice their innocence, their sanity, their very humanity to hold back the tide of cosmic horror? The questions had no answers. Outside the council chambers, the ancient darkness continued its advance. Stars went out one by one. Civilizations fell into silence. The galaxy began its final night. And in the spaces between realities, where thought became nightmare and hope turned to ash, the last humans fought battles that would determine whether anything at all would survive to see another dawn. The council worlds were burning. From his command ship, above the planet Harmony, Admiral Torvin watched the last evacuation shuttles flee toward deep space. Below, the beautiful crystal cities that had taken millennia to build were being consumed by living darkness. All civilian ships are clear of the system, his communications officer reported. But Admiral, where can they go? The enemy has taken everything. Admiral Torvin had no answer. In 6 days, the ancient enemies had destroyed the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. The Devourers had consumed 1,000 worlds. The hive minds controlled entire sectors. The Void Touched had turned region after region into spaces where reality itself was broken. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "I am detecting massive spatial distortions at the edge of the system." Admiral Torvin looked at the display. Space was tearing apart. Cracks of impossible light appeared in the darkness between stars. Through the cracks, he could see glimpses of other dimensions, places where colors had no names, and geometry followed different rules. "What is it?" "Unknown, sir. The readings do not match anything in our databases." The cracks grew larger. Energy patterns poured through that made the ship's instruments scream warnings. Admiral Torvin was about to order his fleet to retreat when something emerged from the tears in space. Ships. But they were unlike anything in Council records. They moved like living things, flowing through space instead of flying. Their hulls seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, creating visual effects that hurt to observe directly. "Scan them," Admiral Torvin ordered. "Sir, I am detecting human life signs, but the readings are wrong. These humans do not register as entirely existing in normal space." More ships emerged from the dimensional rifts, hundreds of them, then thousands. They arranged themselves in formations that looked random, but felt deeply meaningful, like words in a language the mind could not quite understand. A communication signal reached Admiral Torvin's ship. The voice that spoke was human, but changed. It carried harmonics that suggested the speaker existed in multiple realities simultaneously. "This is Admiral Sarah Martinez of the Human Expeditionary Force. Council ships, please withdraw to minimum safe distance." Admiral Torvin activated his communication system. "Admiral Martinez, this is Admiral Torvin of the Council Defense Fleet. We thought all humans had vanished. Where have you been?" "We have been hunting, Admiral, tracking these enemies to their source, fighting them in dimensions where they thought they were safe. We have come home to finish what should have been ended long ago." The human ships moved toward the approaching Devourer cloud with purpose. Admiral Torvin could see the enemy clearly now. A mass of living darkness that stretched across light years. It had consumed so many systems that it had grown beyond measurement. "Admiral Martinez, our weapons have no effect on these entities. How do you plan to fight them?" "We learned new ways of war, Admiral. We became something that can hurt them." The human fleet spread out in patterns that defied tactical logic. Some ships moved backward through time. Others existed in several locations simultaneously. A few seemed to phase in and out of reality itself. Then they opened fire. The weapons they used were not energy beams or missiles. They fired concepts. Absolute truths that reality could not deny. The idea of ending fired into something that had no beginning. The concept of limitation aimed at entities that believed they were infinite. The devourer cloud recoiled as if struck. Sections of the living darkness simply stopped, not destroyed or dispersed. They stopped existing as a possibility. Impossible, whispered Admiral Torvin, science officer. They are using philosophy as a weapon. The battle continued across multiple dimensions. Admiral Torvin watched his instruments try to process events that followed no known physics. Human ships fired the concept of individual identity at the hive mind forces. The alien collective consciousness began to break apart as billions of absorbed beings remembered that they were separate people. Other human vessels targeted the void touched with absolute belief in consistent reality. Where the humans insisted that space and time worked according to natural laws, the reality-warping entities found their powers failing. "Admiral," came another voice over the communication channel. This one sounded older, more tired. "This is Captain James Harrison. I wanted to apologize for leaving without explanation. We knew the final war was coming. We had to fight it where these entities were born, in the spaces between dimensions." Admiral Torvin stared at the display. The tide of battle was turning. The ancient enemies that had seemed unstoppable were being driven back by humans who had learned to fight impossibility itself. "Captain, what did you find in those other dimensions?" "We found the truth, Admiral. These entities are not evil by choice. They are mistakes, errors in the code of reality. They exist because someone, somewhere, once imagined that they could exist." The human ships pressed their attack. Admiral Torvin watched as the devourer cloud began to shrink. The hive minds lost their coordination. The void-touched found themselves trapped in normal space, unable to escape to their dimensional refuges. "We learned that some mistakes can only be corrected by becoming something that should not exist ourselves," Captain Harrison continued. "We paid a price, Admiral. We are not entirely human anymore. We exist in multiple realities. We think in dimensions your mind cannot process. Some of us remember being born before the universe existed." Admiral Torvin felt a chill. "What are you saying?" "We became guardians, Admiral, but guardians of something larger than just this galaxy. We learned to protect the very idea of existence from things that should never have been imagined." The battle reached its climax. The human fleet surrounded the remaining enemy forces in a sphere of absolute impossibility. Admiral Torvin watched as space itself began to heal. The torn regions where the void touched had broken reality, started to return to normal. The consumed matter that the devourers had erased slowly came back into existence. But the humans paid a price for this victory. Their ships began to fade, not destroyed, but becoming less real, moving back toward the dimensional rifts they had emerged from. "Admiral Martinez," Admiral Torvin called out, "are you leaving again?" "We must, Admiral. We exist in too many realities now to stay in just one. But we will be watching. The galaxy will be safe." "Will we see you again?" A long pause. Then a different voice answered, one that sounded very young and very old at the same time. "You will see our children, Admiral. Humans who choose to remain fully in your reality. They will rebuild their colonies. They will seem normal. But some of them will carry the knowledge. Some will stand ready to become what we became, if the need ever arises again." The human fleet was almost gone now, fading back into dimensions beyond normal perception. But the space they left behind was clean. The ancient enemies were gone, not just defeated, but corrected. The mistakes in reality had been fixed. "Admiral," his communications officer said quietly, I am receiving a message from the evacuated populations. They want to know if it is safe to return home. Admiral Torvin looked at the space where impossible battles had been fought and won. The stars were shining again. Space was healing. The nightmare was over. "Tell them yes," he said. "Tell them the Guardians have come home." As his ship turned toward the Council worlds, Admiral Torvin thought about what he had witnessed. Humans had sacrificed their very humanity to save a galaxy that had never known it needed saving. They had become something beyond mortal understanding, to fight enemies beyond mortal comprehension. And they had done it willingly, quietly, without asking for recognition or reward. In the depths of space, reality settled back into its proper patterns. The ancient darkness was gone. And somewhere in dimensions beyond naming, the Guardians kept their eternal watch, making sure that some mistakes would never be repeated. The Council would remember. They would tell the story of Earth's children who vanished in silence and returned as saviors. They would finally understand that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to become something terrible so others could remain innocent. The stars shone a little brighter. The darkness held no terrors. The Guardians were home.